What's going on, YouTube? Today I bring you my Week 10 power rankings. Let's jump right into it. Starting off with the bottom tier, what I call the trash tier. Number 32, Texans are going to stay the same. They are the worst team in football this year. It was expected. They've been as such. Obviously, they weren't set up to be a great team, but they're just not good. So they're going to stick here at 32 after, another loss. 31, the Panthers. Even though they're tanking, they've been better than the Texans. Got a few wins, but like they, who knows what's going on with them? Like they're tanking. Are they going for a quarterback? Probably. PJ Walker has played good except for this last week, so it sounds like he's going to be the starter going forward. They only traded McCaffrey, but they got good trade value for him. They were offered like a first for DJ Moore and like two firsts and a second for Brian Burns. If I'm Carolina, I do that. I don't see why they declined it. But either way, though, Panthers, they're tanking. They're down here. They lost 30. The Bears, you know, they're getting better. And I guess that's the best I can say about them. Justin Fields is improving. They had a close game against the Dolphins this week. I mean, they played a good game, except on the offensive part at least. But a lot of it was Justin Fields. He really is improving, and I'm excited to see what they do with the future. Ryan Poles, if he does all his stuff correct, he has the most money to spend. He has a ton of draft picks. Or at least he's got a normal amount of draft picks. This could be a very bright future for the Bears going forward. Number 29, rounding off this tier, is going to be the Steelers. Didn't play this week, but other teams moved up, and they've just not been good, right? Quarterback situation. Pickett's not been that bad. His stat line's not good, but he's not been that bad. He just doesn't have help. Um, Claypool now gone. I like that. That's good compensation for him. TJ Watt's been out, obviously, so losing one of the best players in the NFL hurts you a lot. I mean, the team's been disappointing this year, but it's about what we expected. Maybe a little worse, though. Going into the second tier, which is the week to week tier, teams that just play good one week, don't the next week, but seems to be bad more than often than good. 28 going to be the Commanders. Taylor Heineke is not very good, and that's not to say that Carson Wentz is that good either, but he's probably better than Heineke, if that's clear at this point. But Wentz also can't stay healthy. Beyond that, the defense is still disappointing, even with Ron Rivera there, who I think is gone after the season. They're 4-5. They're competitive. I mean, they put a close loss to the Vikings, but the Vikings, even though I'm high on them, it's not like the Chiefs or the Bills. Like you narrowly lose to the Chiefs or the Bills. It's like okay, right? Like Titans from last week, or Titans from this week actually. But Commanders, they're very week to week. Down here at 28 for me. 27 gonna be the Falcons. They should have won that game. Absolutely should have won it. There's no reason that they should have lost. The Chargers have not been good this year, but the Falcons just cannot finish games this year. Fumbles, turnovers, struggling offensively at times. I mean, they just have not been good. They should have won that game, and well, they lost, so that's why they're moving down here. The Lions here at 26. Great win for them. Absolutely great win for the Lions here. Packers have not been great, but it was a great performance by the Lions, just considering how bad they normally are, how good the Packers normally are. They're not going to do anything this year, playoffs wise or anything, but it's a great win to get going forward. And, it just shows that they're a very feisty team. They're a young, competitive team. So I like that. 25, the Jaguars rounding off this tier, super week to week. Lost last week, and then they come in this week. They get a win over the Raiders, who are above them, because I still believe the Raiders are the better team. Even though they lost, the Raiders are the far more talented team. We'll get to them in a little bit. But as for the Jaguars, they're up and coming. They're young. They're feisty. They can win any given week. They just don't a lot of the times. So, they're not going to be much higher than this season because I just, again, don't see them doing anything this year. They're a week to week team that'll have a high pick. But going forward, in the future, I am excited to see what the Jaguars do. Going into the next tier, and this is the should be playing better than they are tier. And I think all these teams pretty much fit the definition of should be better than they are. The Colts are probably they're playing worse than some of the teams below them. And actually, that's the case with a lot of these teams here. Like they're playing worse or have lost to teams below them, but they're teams that absolutely should be playing better, and they are better than what they've been showing. And there's different reasons for each team. For the Colts here, Firing Frank Reich was the wrong move, in my opinion. You keep him till the end of the season, at least, because Jeff Saturday just pretty makes it very obvious that you're tanking. Which, if that's what you want to do, whatever. But it's not the worst hire in the world because if he's good, you look like a genius. If he's not good, well, yeah, I mean, you were tanking, right? That's what it was for. So I get it, but this team should be so much better. I really, Frank Reich took the blame, and it's Chris Browler. He's to blame there. The Raiders, even though they just lost, they're a much more talented team than they've shown. But coaching has severely affected them. Josh McDaniels is not a good coach, and he has lost them games. The only wins they have this year are over the Texans and the Broncos, and neither the Texans or the Broncos have been very good this year. So the Raiders, even though they're below the Broncos, it's partially because like the Broncos have a way better defense and their offense is at least showing signs of improvement. With the Raiders here, I mean, it just looks like a disaster every single week. And like, again, with like the Broncos, or say the Browns, like the Browns always look good on offense for the most part. The Broncos always look good on defense for the most part. The Raiders just maybe every other week they'll have like one side of the team show up, but it's just a car crash watching the Raiders play right now. The Packers, kind of the same thing. The offense is dreadful, and I think Aaron Rodgers is getting way too much of the blame. Uh, it seems like he's actually getting all the blame, which is weird to me because the cap doesn't exist basically. So this whole like, oh, it's because of the money he took, I just don't feel that's true. And like he has no help. He's got nobody to throw to. He barely has any time to throw, and the defense lets him down week after week. I mean, this team is just not built well right now. I mean, they're not competing, and it sucks because they should be so much better than they are. The Browns, and this is kind of the category now where it's like within this category where the Browns, like their offense shows up most weeks, but their defense is just not there, even though they've got some good players back there. And Miles Garrett, to me, is the defensive player of the year. He's been absolutely incredible. He's got no help back there. And so it's like they come in and play these great offensive games and they're super close every week, but their defense just lets them down. And then their offense isn't quite good enough to win them the game. So they're down here at 21, but they should be higher. I think they're a few defensive pieces away from contending. And honestly, their offense might actually get worse with Deshaun Watson just because they found a groove here with Brissett, who's played very well. 20, the Broncos also going to move up just kind of by other teams moving down. And the Broncos, you're hoping to see improvement going forward. The defense has been locked down, best passing defense in the NFL, but the offense has obviously struggled in a lot of ways. You're hoping they can get better. They showed signs of improvement, but it was the Jaguars. So we'll see going forward, but Broncos really have to turn things around here. Absolutely should be better than where they are. And then the Cardinals just haven't played great this year, and they showed it against the Seahawks where they just, especially their offensive line was just manhandled by the Seahawks. They had their way with him with the Cardinals where the offensive line just got manhandled, and they've just not been good this year. Kyler Murray, Hopkins has been great, returning, but there's just not a lot of help on that offense despite all the weapons. The defense has not been great, especially with the absence of Chandler Jones. Yeah, this Cardinals team, they're having issues right now. Cliff Kingsbury, I'd imagine he's the next coach out sometime within the next few weeks. Cardinals should be much better than they are, but they're just not. Moving on to the next tier. This is going to be has potential for this season. The Saints, they've been really hurt, but they've played in a lot of close games because their defense is still good and their offense has shown signs. I mean, again, you got to consider how many injuries they've had. Michael Thomas now being out for the year. Like with Andy Dalton, they've actually played pretty good for the most part most weeks. They didn't play good against the Ravens, but there's potential there for this season. Like there's still a team that can compete any given week, even if it doesn't seem like it recently. Like they've still got that potential. So I'd at least trust them right now more to do something this season than the Colts, the Raiders, the Packers, etc. And kind of the same with the Rams, to a lesser degree because they haven't been as hurt. But really, I think it comes down to the fact that the offensive line is just really bad, and their defense does not have depth. They do not have defensive depth whatsoever, and that hurts. right? I mean, for obvious reasons. So a team that should be way better, but I still think absolutely has potential. I mean, they have a very similar team to last year in a lot of rights, and they can still win these games. I mean, if they figure a few things out, but the run game has been non existent and basically because of the line, and that's made the passing game difficult as well. So the Rams, there's potential there, but they need to figure out the offensive line somehow. The Giants, it's a team that I'm not super high on. That most it seems if basically a 50-50 split. You're either really high on the Giants or you're not high on them because they're just not 6-2 good. They're not 6-1 good. Daniel Jones has looked good this year because of Brian DeBull. That's that. Saquon's been great. The line is improving. Like I just think at the end of the day, the offenses look so good because of Brian DeBull. It's not talented enough to actually win them big games going forward. And as for the defense, I mean, they've been good. Like adding Martindale was great. I mean, stealing him from the Ravens, right? But this just isn't a team that's going to win going forward. They got very, very lucky in pretty much all of their wins. And the best teams find ways to win games, which is what the Giants have done to a degree, but I just don't think it's going to last. So for me, I feel like they're a middle of the road team. I'd imagine them ending with 9, 8 wins at the end of the season. Maybe more. We'll see. But I don't see them being a serious contender this year, although there's potential just because they have found ways to win. The Buccaneers, um, great drive at the end of the game, but they were really bad before that final drive. And that's really been the Buccaneers, is they've just not been good this year. The defense has a lot of injuries. The offense has looked very bad, also injuries, but just as a matter of fact that Tom Brady's old. He just does not have it anymore that he used to. They're just not the same team. There's potential to still do stuff this year. Things can always change, of course. Players can get healthy, but they're not up there with the rest of the teams this year. And then the Chargers, who, even though they win, drop a lot here. And part of that's because, like, I realize I'm too high on these guys for how they've been playing. But they barely held on to that Falcons game. That for a team as talented as them, they should go in and win easily, but they just didn't. They won by 3 points, luckily. They're not a good team. There's potential there. You got a lot of firepower. Keenan Allen hopefully gets healthy. But the Chargers have been disappointing this year, and they're not looking good. So there's potential, but they're just not looking good so far. Then moving on to the next tier, and these are teams that I don't think are quite great teams, but they can still move up to that level. The Jets have looked very impressive besides Zach Wilson. The defense has been great. Sauce Gardner is the defensive rookie of the year right now, and I don't see that changing, although he's been very handsy and it hasn't been called at times. He's been great, right? Very shut down because it's not like he's grabbing every play. So the defense as a whole has played great. The offense, it's been good, and losing Brees Hall sucked, but Zach Wilson has not been good. He's just not been good. And so this is very much a team that's seemingly a quarterback away right now because they're building their team in a very well manner. But I think just Zach Wilson is really what holds them back from being a great team right now. I don't see them being an actual threat. And similar with the Patriots, the defense has been very good this year, but offensively speaking, Mac Jones and Bailey Zappi being a quarterback battle is not exactly what you want. Neither's super bad, but neither is very good. And so this is a team that, they can win, right, with quarterbacks that aren't at that level. But, like, are they seriously going to be a threat this year? No. And the Bengals is a polarizing one because they were poor to start out the season, and they are getting better. Burrow has started to play very good. The offense has got going, and the defense has been improving. I still really like the coaching staff, even if Zach Taylor probably isn't the guy long term. I like Callahan. I like Anaramu, I think is how you say it. So I like a lot of stuff about this team, but what the run they had last year was very, very lucky because they're still a very inexperienced team. Teams have shown they can slow down Jamar Chase a lot more, who was a big part of that offense. So they're a good team. They can move up. I just don't know if they're actually contenders this year. especially compared to some of the other teams. And then the Titans, the defense is great. The run game is great. Derrick Henry looks fantastic. The passing game is non-existent right now. I do not know if a receiver got a reception against the Chiefs. And the Chiefs don't have the best defense in the world, especially when it comes to passing defense. That's not good. Like, everything is going great for them except for the passing game right now, and that's an issue at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, while everything's going good for the Titans, if you can't get a passing game going in today's league, I just don't think you can be a true contender. Now moving on to the next tier, which is teams that are right outside of being contenders. Number 9, 49ers. Um, the 49ers are not bad at anything. And it's weird because they actually have a solid passing offense, especially now with Christian McCaffrey. The run game is good. The defense is good. And yet they're just not great enough at anything to really be a contender, in my opinion. Um, I think they're definitely, like I said, they're solid at everything. But I just don't know if they're good on every front to really be considered a true contender, especially considering they've had injuries on defense. Um, Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, he's a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback, and they've gotten far with him before. But against the Vikings and the Eagles, they have a shot. I just don't know if they get through both of them, or any other NFC team. Because speaking of the other NFC teams, Cowboys, even though I still think they're not as good as their record, they've been good this year, and Dak looks pretty good. The offense is starting to get going. They've got players on there. The line is starting to play better, considering it's a bunch of backups at this point. And the defense is still playing like one of the best in football. Micah Parsons has been incredible. Trevon Diggs is really progressing, which is good for him because he wasn't actually that good last year. So the Cowboys, they're I don't think they're as good as their record, but they're still a good team. They're just not quite contenders to me. Again, Mike McCarthy. There's a few things holding them back from truly being up there with the best teams. And then the Seahawks, I think I just need to see more. Like, it's been 8 games now. They've played very good football. They're at the top of their division. Geno Smith has been great. The defense has played better than they should have normally. I just need to see it more. If they keep doing it all season, then they will move up. I just don't know if I can quite call them contenders yet, just because at the end of the day, it's still Geno Smith, but he's played good this year. So we'll see what the Seahawks do. Moving on into the tier of contenders, and these are not the favorites, but these are teams that can win the Super Bowl. Number 6, the Dolphins. Tua looks great. He's really making that team perform way better than they have in the past. The defense, it struggled at times, but they made a big acquisition with Bradley Chubb. We're hoping they can play better going forward. But the offense looks great. Tyreek Hill looks like, an offensive player of the year runaway almost at this point. Yeah, it's they're a good team. They can absolutely win the Super Bowl this year. It's going to be tough. Again, they're not in the favorites category, but they're a good team. The Ravens at number 5, Lamar, as per usual, is looking fantastic. If he doesn't get a big payday in Baltimore, he's going to get it somewhere else. The offense, I mean, it doesn't actually have that many weapons around him, but Lamar is just so good of an individual weapon that he almost doesn't need that much talent around him, even if it would help. But the defense has played great for the most part. The passing D has not been very good. They let up lot of yards, but they hold their team in games to where Lamar can still do work. They're still a very well coached team. They've got a lot of talent. They are Super Bowl contenders to me. And then the Vikings, who again, are they 7-1 good? No, but they've found They've found ways to win games, and part of that's because Kevin O'Connell's been very good. The defense has not been great, but the offense has very much played beyond standards. Kirk Cousins is an MVP candidate, and people got to stop acting like he's not. Justin Jefferson is one of the best in the game. They just made a huge acquisition with TJ Hawkinson. This is absolutely a contender, even though I agree that they're a little bit overrated. They're a contender. They're a very good team. And then finally, moving on into the favorites for this week, the Bills are going to drop 2 spots to number 3 after a loss to the Jets. Josh Allen was playing hurt. I'm pretty sure that he hurt his arm in some way before that final big hit that really hurt it. But that shouldn't be an excuse to lose to the Jets. If it was, maybe a narrow win, they'd probably still be 1, maybe 2. But losing to the Jets, I mean, they don't have a division win yet. which is weird because they're probably playing in maybe the best division in football right now, and they don't have a divisional win. I mean, they're very much not locks at whatsoever to make the playoffs right now, which is weird for a team that is so good, that should be so good. They were my number one team. They were my Super Bowl favorites coming into this year. They are not like playoff locks at all. So I think that moves you down to 3, especially after that loss against the Jets, where I get Josh Allen was probably hurt, especially at the end of the game, but he was not great, and the team as a whole did not play very good. Um, the Chiefs at number 2, they're going to move up from number 4. And by the way, the tiers change every week, of course, too. So that doesn't mean the Chiefs weren't contenders last week. But the Chiefs, they have been very, very good this year. They've still got the best offense in football. They didn't need Tyreek for it. And honestly, they might even have a Tyreek replacement with Kadarius Toney. The offense looks fantastic. The defense, they always heat up at the end of the year and in the playoffs. Steve Spagnuolo, I think he just really knows how to work it against certain teams. But the offense, best in football. They definitely look like very good contenders once again. And now, number 1, though, the Eagles have finally moved up to that number 1 spot. They're 8-0. They're the only undefeated team in football. And you don't get there just by playing bad teams. There's a whole hype. There's a whole train behind that the Eagles are overrated and not that great of a team. The best teams find ways to win every game. And even though they've not played the best opponents, that's what they've done. Of course, you're going to lose more games if you've played better opponents, but they could be, with 2 or 3 losses right now, but they're 8-0. So for me, I think that's good enough to have them at number 1, the only undefeated team in football. But that is going to round out my power rankings for this week. Let me know your guys' power rankings down below. Is your favorite team too high, too low? Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell down below. And if you like the content, stick around. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.